Ever felt like you were fighting a battle that just felt impossible? That no matter how hard you try, you can never seem to get the win? Well, that's what battling with lust feels like. And trust me, I get it. And I've been there. And that's why today I'm laying it all out. My journey on how I went from being held captive by my lust to being set free by God's love. And stick around because at the end of the video, I'll be giving out 3 keys that can help you break free from lust, just like how they helped me. So, what is lust? Well, lust is a very powerful sin. It's pretty much defined as having an intense or unbridled sexual desire. Now, that's not saying that we can't have any desires, we just can't let them control our minds and our actions. And I know for a lot of us Christians, especially us men, we deal with this sin on a daily basis. I mean, it's pretty hard to deal with. It's dominated most of my life, and honestly, it's still an ongoing battle. Now, lust honestly can become like an addiction. It pretty much just takes hold of your mind and it doesn't let it go. It can skew your perception of intimacy to the point that if you're not careful, it can even inhibit you from having really meaningful relationships. And honestly, that's something I struggle with personally throughout my relationships growing up, both romantic and otherwise. And it really puts into perspective on how deep this thing really goes. And that's why you should avoid it at all costs, no matter what, no matter how enticing it looks like, no matter how good something may look, it is not worth it. Trust me. And honestly, I wish I had taken my own advice years ago because my battle with lust started when I was just 13 years old, right around the time when you first discover that your body's changing and all these different things. And my first encounter was with actually one of the premium shows called Cinemax, or at that time, Skinamax. And it was an interesting experience. And I remember being freaked out for the first time, and then it eventually got to the point where I just couldn't get enough of the stuff. And as I got older, the battle became harder, and I felt myself becoming more and more consumed by this lust. And this lasted for about 10 years of my life. I mean, dude, I was watching almost every type of content out there. The Hub, if you know what that is, H anime, even the whole ecchi fan service anime like High School DxD, Testament of Sister New Devil, Redo Healer. The list goes on and on. Pretty much if it's out there, I've seen it. And I'm not too proud of it either because I feel like I was being fake. And honestly, the worst part about this whole thing was just the shame of it all because I felt like a fraud. Whereas somebody once told me like a hypocrite, and that was the truth. On Sundays, I'd be a saint, and Monday through Saturday, dude, I was living like a devil, just out there enjoying my vices, watching and looking at whatever came across my screen at whatever time. It got to the point I was looking at that stuff 2 to 3 times a day. And really, it just took my mind. It took my mind away from the things that were really important and what I should have been focusing on. Like my health, my relationships, my friendships. And honestly, to make it worse, I tried to rationalize my addiction to myself, saying that it was just some harmless fun, saying things like, well, it's not like I'm doing it with somebody else, so God really shouldn't mind. And eventually, it got to the point where it was hard for me to pray. Think about that. Think about how down bad you have to be to not even pray to the Lord about these things. Because I felt like I was beyond saving, that I would be forever trapped in by this sin. And I know for a fact that there are others out there who are watching this video thinking the same thing. And trust me, let me just tell you from one brother to another that you're not beyond saving. God loves you and he will set you free from this, just like he did for me. So in order to set me free, God had to first get my attention. And he started by convicting me. And as fellow believers, I know we all know when God starts convicting you of something, that means he wants you to stop it. And you probably shouldn't be doing it anymore. And the way he did that was he brought my attention to the fact that, one, he heard my cries. he knew the pain I was going through, and he just reminded me that he still loved me. And at my lowest point, I made a promise to God to stop falling into lust. I promised him that I will never go back to this stuff as long as he gets me out of it. And he gave me these 3 keys in order to beat my lust and my hub addiction. The first of which is replacing the triggers. Now, for me, one of my triggers was my cell phone, bringing it into the bathroom while I was handling business to handle other business. So instead, I would leave it out of the bathroom and bring in a book with me, something, fantasy related, like Dungeons and Dragons, something like that, or nonfiction, something to just improve myself as a person. And I've also cut out all the adult content I was consuming, the hub, all the raunchy anime and stuff like that. I don't watch it anymore because I can't. And what I've always learned and heard is that God will always give you an out to your temptation. You just have to take it. So what can you replace your triggers with? The second key is getting in a community. Now, for me, I had and still have a small circle of brothers who I can lean on when I stumble. I share with them my struggles and the things that I'm going through, and some of them are dealing with the exact same thing, so we lean on each other and build each other up when one of us is feeling weak. And the main reason why a community is so important is because the enemy wants you to be isolated. He wants you to be by yourself because that's when you're at your weakest and you're most vulnerable. Because when you're isolated, you're just easy prey for him to take out. But when you're in community, you can look after each other when one of you is weak. You can come together when the times get tough and just really build each other up. Now, if you don't have a community of people who you feel like you can trust or who will have your back, then join my Discord server using the link in the description. Because there are plenty of people who feel the same way you do, who are trying to get out of this thing and just better yourself, and who also just love anime, right? I think that's a pretty good bonus. But the whole of it is that we're just there to lift each other up, no matter what your battle is. And now the last key, which is probably the most important and the most obvious one, is to pray. Have endless prayer and to constantly be in God's presence. Now, this one was difficult for me because, like I said earlier, I was ashamed and wanted to hide from God. But then he sent me this verse to remind me of how foolish I was made. And in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. Now, God is saying that he wants us to come to him in our weakness, that he knows our battles are hard, that he just wants to help us because, he's a good parent. Like any good father, mother, he wants to help his children. And he just wants the best for us. So when you feel down and out, when you just feel like you just can't do it anymore, he'll be right there with you to lift you back up and get you right back on your feet. But in order for him to do that, in order for God to do the work he needs to do, you have to be completely open and vulnerable to him. And I know it's hard. I'm still working on this myself. I don't like being vulnerable. I don't like opening myself up, but it's necessary in order for you to grow. But I promise you, the result is going to be life-changing no matter what. And the first step you can take is being honest with yourself and admit that you need help to beat this thing. And after that, get in the community of brothers and sisters who are going through this thing too, and those who've already been through it who can guide you and give you some pointers on what to do. And you can do that by subscribing to the channel and joining the Discord linked in the description. And once you get into the community, don't forget to own your story, but don't write it alone.